This is a story about a murder that took place and a person who committed the murder and how they came to the situation and what happened afterward. This is about a guy named Mike, and Mike is a former police officer. He had gone out to a bar, sort of a bar and grill one night, and he'd been drinking, got pretty drunk. There were a few guys there, a few other guys there that they were having some sort of a conflict. Mike and those guys, the group that Mike was with. I don't recall what it was about, but some sort of a conflict. And Mike, he got pretty mouthy with these guys. They were both were going back and forth, and Mike got in one of the guys' face, got up in his face, and threatened him. And Mike's a good sized guy. So he's over 6'2", maybe a little over 6'2", good sized guy, and kind of a lean build, but he's fit, and he can definitely handle himself. So they got into this conflict. It didn't turn into a fight, but there were words exchanged, threats made, warnings made, that type of thing. A lot of it was alcohol fueled, and just the environment that they were in at that moment, being in the bar and having their friends there, and having a number of drinks. So later on in the evening, those guys they kept they separated, but those guys, Mike noticed they kept staring at him. He'd look at them, and they were looking at him, still pretty heated about the issue. Well, later in the evening, those guys had already left. Now Mike's leaving, and he saw them in the parking lot. They were in their vehicle. It was an SUV type vehicle. I'm not sure what brand it was, but a SUV type vehicle, black, nice, new, clean, shiny, tinted windows. He recognized the driver and someone in the passenger seat, or saw someone in the passenger seat, but he didn't recognize them. But he did recognize the driver as one of the people that was in the other group. So Mike got in his car, he left, and these guys followed him for a ways. And he went a few different directions, and he thought he ditched them. And he didn't see them behind him anymore. He was trying to lose them. And he thought he was successful in this. Well, he ends up going over to his house, goes inside, and he hears a car outside, or a vehicle. He looks out, and sure enough, it's these guys. Well, he went out there to confront them, not sure what. They end up grabbing him. These guys get out of the back seat. They grab him. They have him at gunpoint. They take him into the back of the SUV, throw him in there in the back seat, not the very back, but the back seat. They put him in there, and they drive away with him. They kidnap him. Well, they beat him pretty good. Give him, pretty good beating. They take him to some location. I think it was a house somewhere. They parked in a garage, went into the house through the garage door so that nobody would see, Mike or them walking, outside of the house anywhere. And it was at that location, I believe, is where they put a beating on him. And they kept him there for a while. And then from there, as if this isn't bad enough, One night they take him. They want him to do some work for them, so-called work. Turns out these guys are a criminal organization. He's not wanting to be involved in anything like that, trying to steer, he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. They rough him up a little more. And then they take him out, back out to the car. I think this was after a couple days. I think they had him for 2 days, if I recall. They take him back into the garage. He's tied up. Take him over to the, in the SUV. This is at nighttime. And they drive far out of the city, out of the town, far out into a rural field area. It's late at night. There's nobody around. There's no street lights, nothing. He's blindfolded the whole time. But he gets there. They get him out. Nothing. He has no idea where he's at. He just knows he's out in the field in a rural area, and they'd been driving for quite some time. He knew he was nowhere near the city or any town or any place like that, a very remote location. When they get there, they get him out. He hears other people talking that were not with them in the SUV or at the house. Well, they take his blindfold off, and there's a few other vehicles, I believe 3 other vehicles out there. One of the people is in charge. Mike doesn't know him, but knows that this person is in charge by the way he's telling people what to do, the way the whole thing is being organized. There's another guy there who is also tied up, and he's beaten very badly. Mike is told to help this guy dig a hole. This guy, they've untied the other person is there who's beaten very badly, and they have him digging a hole in the ground. They tell Mike to help him dig this hole, and these guys, the guys who have kidnapped these 2 men, they have them at gunpoint. They're telling them dig. So this guy, he was already digging first. He had already started. Mike reluctantly begins digging and helping him dig this hole. They dig a good sized hole, several feet deep, a wide hole. It's a grave. These guys had them dig a grave. So now they point guns at Mike. They tell the other guy to get in the grave. The guy gets in there. He's standing up so he's out of the grave somewhat. They tell Mike to shoot him. They give Mike a gun. They're pointing guns at him. They have guns to his head, to the back of his head, to the sides of his head. They tell Mike to shoot the guy in the head and kill him. He says, no, I don't want to do that. They tell him, the only way you're leaving here is if you do that. If you don't do that, then we'll shoot him and we'll shoot you, and you'll both be buried in there. If you shoot him, we'll let you go with us. Mike was very reluctant. This went on for quite some time. Then Mike pointed the gun at the other person who was in the grave, standing up, pointed the gun at his head, and said he was sorry, and pulled the trigger, shot him in the head, and killed him. The guy flopped down, however it was. They get him, the other people there get him more in the grave, and They take a picture of it, and somehow they mark it with like geo-marking or something like that. They take the gun from Mike, they get the shell casing, they put it in a bag. They told Mike, this is evidence of a murder. They said he needs to do some other work, as they call it, for them, or they're going to hand all this information over to the police. So Mike ends up working for these guys. What they wanted him to do was transport drugs that were coming up from Mexico into the United States. He began doing this for a while. I'm not sure how long. At some point, he told them, enough is enough. I've worked enough for you guys. This is all over a dispute at a bar. This is going too far. They end up letting him go. Mike gets caught for another crime and ends up in jail for this other crime, serious criminal activity that he was involved in. From there, someone in the jail knew about what he had done and approached him about it and talked to him about this, discussed the matter with him, and told him not to tell anybody anything about their organization or he would be killed. However, a guard heard this through a microphone that was in the jail.